We've talked a lot about Notre Dame's 2026 recruiting class lately, but which current freshmen are primed to make an impact this season? Today, we are counting down the top 5 newcomers who will make the biggest impact for the Irish in the fall. That's next.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up? Welcome in. This is Locked On Irish, your daily Notre Dame podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Wojciak. I'm a Notre Dame alum and have been podcasting about the Irish for the past 5 years. Today is Friday, May 9th. So happy Friday. And thank you for getting your day started right here by making this your first listen of the day. Quick reminder to hit that subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you are listening to the podcast. It goes a long way in helping out the show, and that way you'll never miss an episode. This episode is brought to you by the Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn any TV into your Xbox, no console needed. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more. All right, we've got another Top 5 Friday in store for today. If you are new to the program, Top 5 Friday is something we'll be doing every other Friday throughout the offseason, where I basically just rank my top 5 in any specific category related to Notre Dame football. Might do some basketball stuff as well later on down the road. It could be anything, but the goal is to have some fun, spark some debate during the months when there's really just not that much going on. And this week, we're breaking down the top 5 freshmen who I think are set to make the biggest impact in 2025. Marcus Freeman has shown that he is not afraid to play true freshman ever since he became the head coach. And last year, Notre Dame had one freshman All-American in cornerback Leonard Moore, and linebacker Kingston Viliamu-Asa was not far behind him. Maybe if he didn't get hurt at the end of the year in that Army game, he could put up enough numbers to crack like the second or maybe first team list, depending on which one you're looking at. But still, those two guys had a huge impact on a team that made it to the national championship. So, which freshmen are poised to step up this year? To me, I think it all comes down to 2 key factors: talent and the path to playing time. You have to be extremely talented to get on the field as a true freshman, especially on this team, which is already loaded with talent and has a bunch of experienced playmakers. But you also need a realistic path to getting on the field as a true freshman to make in impact. For example, I like Nolan James Jr., the running back, but there is no way he's getting any serious touches this season outside of garbage time because he's behind Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price, Aeneas Williams, Kedron Young, and Jabron Payne. So here are the freshmen who I think are good enough to get on the field and will deliver when they're out there. And number 1 might surprise you. I got tight end James Flanigan. And look, I get it. This might seem like a bit of a reach, especially considering he hasn't even stepped foot on campus because he wasn't an early enrollee. But hear me out. History tells us, at least recent history tells us, that doesn't matter. Tim O'Malley from Irish Illustrated, got to give a shout out to my guys over there. He has been on this for a while. So he pointed out that for the past 7 seasons, the best freshman on Notre Dame did not enroll until the summer. Last year, 2024, Leonard Moore was the best freshman on the team. Who's a freshman All-American cornerback. And if you had said at this time last year that Leonard Moore was going to be the most impactful freshman, you would have thought that was crazy because they already had Benjamin Morrison and they had Christian Gray and they had Jaden Mickey in front of him. But things worked out. Leonard Moore got the opportunity and he certainly made the most of it. 2023, Jeremiah Love was the best true freshman that year. He was second on the team in rushing behind Audric Estime. 2022, Benjamin Morrison didn't enroll until the summer and then ended up starting all 12 games that season, 13 if you include the bowl game, and he was a freshman All-American as well. 2021, Joe Walt started as a tight end basically, converts to tackle, and then starts about halfway through the season when Notre Dame couldn't figure out anything on the offensive line, and then he ended up becoming arguably the best freshman tackle Notre Dame has ever seen. 2020, Michael Mayer, awesome player, one of the best offensive weapons on a team that finished the regular season undefeated. 2019, Kyle Hamilton had one of the best freshman seasons of any Notre Dame player ever. Freshman All-American, first snap inside Notre Dame Stadium, gets a pick 6. 2018, it's Jason Adamiola. He wasn't quite as impactful as the other guys, but he still had 19 tackles and 2 tackles for loss and appeared in all 12 games. So if James Flanigan can have a season like any of the guys on that list who did not enroll until the summer, in the same way that James Flanigan is going to do, then Notre Dame's offense is going to take a massive step forward, and I believe he has the talent to make an impact immediately. He's got NFL bloodlines. His dad is a Notre Dame alum. He's 6'5", 230 pounds, so physically, I think he's ready to play at the collegiate level. He was the number 6 tight end in the class, number 126 player overall. According to the 24/7 Sports Composite, he combined for over 1,100 receiving yards and 17 touchdowns during his junior and senior years in high school. This is a little bit unrelated, but he was an absolute force on defense as well. Had 13 sacks and 19 tackles for loss in his senior season alone. He's not going to be playing defensive end for Notre Dame, but that just shows you how good of a football player that James Flanigan is. And at this point in his career, he's a better blocker than he is a receiver, but he understands how to get underneath smaller defenders and he can drive them backwards. And I think that is what allows him, or that is what is going to allow him to get on the field as a freshman, because he might have the easiest path to playing time compared to any other freshman, because the Notre Dame tight end room doesn't have that much depth right now. Eli Raridan is the clear tight end 1, but he's also been hurt a lot in his career. Can you count on him to be healthy for an entire season, especially if this season goes until January like we all hope and expect it will? Transfer Ty Washington looks like he could be a strong tight end too this season, but he's also more of a blocker. Didn't do a ton as a receiver at Arkansas. We haven't really seen what he can do yet in this offense. And then Cooper Flanigan is out for the year because of an Achilles injury he suffered against Georgia. So really, all James Flanigan would have to do to get on the field for some meaningful snaps would be beat out Kevin Bauman, the 6-year senior who's already dealt with a litany of injuries in his career, and beat out Jack Larson, who's a little bit undersized, and then he could be tight end 3, and that will at least get him on the field a little bit. Look back to 2023. Notre Dame had Mitchell Evans and Holden Stace as the clear 1 and 2 tight ends. Cooper Flanigan worked his way onto the field as a blocker and ended up being a pretty impactful player later on in the year. Wasn't getting a ton of passes, but was a good blocker, and I think that's exactly what James Flanigan can do this year and then some. Even though Mike Denbrock wants to run 11 personnel, I think they're going to run more 11 personnel this year. If Flanigan emerges and they have 3 quality tight ends with Raridan, Washington, and Flanigan, they could always go back to 12. It's what they're used to, and just feed the ball to all of their great running backs. All right, now at number 2, I've got Madden Faraimo, the linebacker. If Flanigan is a reach, Madden Faraimo is a safe pick. Second highest rated prospect in the class according to the 24/7 Sports Composite. And we just watched Kingston Biliamu-Asa, another top 100 true freshman linebacker, make a big contribution to the defense in his first year. But we should be careful, because just because KVA was that good doesn't mean we should expect the same level of production out of Faraimo right away. Like last year, KVA had 37 tackles and 3 tackles for loss, despite the fact that he missed the last couple of games and was out for the Indiana game and barely played against Georgia as well. But even if Faraimo is not as productive as KVA, I think he's going to be very impactful, because physically he's ready to compete right away. He's 6'2", 224 pounds, and he has been with the team since the college football playoff. Extremely talented prospect coming out of high school, number 3 linebacker in the class of 2025, 66th ranked player overall. And Eric Sondheimer, a legendary writer for the LA Times who has been covering California high school football for decades, called Faraimo one of the best players he has ever seen come through the state. And there has been a lot of really talented high school football players to come through California, specifically Southern California in the Trinity League, which is where Madden Faraimo played. Here's a quote from a great article he did on Faraimo at the end of last season. Quote, "Don't let any ranking system mislead you, for there's no one better at the position in high school football in California and perhaps the nation than Madden Faraimo. From physicality to size, strength, agility, and intelligence, he is a man playing with boys. He gives respect because of the way he was taught, and he commands respect with his play." End quote. That's really high praise for a high school linebacker, and Faraimo has great work ethic, and I believe he understands what it takes to thrive at a place like Notre Dame, which is why I am so confident he is going to make an immediate impact once he gets on the field this fall. His path to playing time isn't quite as clear as James Flanigan, because Notre Dame has a really, really good linebacking core already, but I believe he'll be able to contribute on defense and special teams, because if you look at the room right now, Drake Bowen, Jalen Sneed, KVA, and Jane Osbury are certainly going to take the bulk of the snaps. But Notre Dame rotated 5 linebackers last year, and Jack Heiser is gone. And maybe they want another 5th guy to come in, maybe not take up quite as many snaps, but I think that Madden Faraimo is absolutely going to get some run in this defense. Now, he's going to have to beat out Preston Zinter and maybe even Bodie Cajon as well, but I think he can do that. And if you think about how effectively Max Bulla rotated his linebackers last year, like they were constantly rotating guys in and out. And even though Jack Heiser and Drake Bowen led the way, Heiser had 641 snaps, Bowen had 615. Osbury, Sneed, and KVA were not that far behind. So Kaiser and Bowen were in the 600s. Osbury was at 438. Sneed was at 433. And those are 2 guys who play rover, which doesn't stay on the field all the time because Notre Dame runs a lot of nickel. And then KVA was last with 343 snaps. But again, he missed pretty much the entire game against Army, missed USC, missed Indiana, and missed most of Georgia. So Max Bulla is more than willing to rotate his guys. And I think if Faraimo can provide anything close to what KVA was able to do for the Irish last year, they can take an already loaded linebacking core and make it even better. All right, we've covered the heavy hitters, but there's a freshman wide receiver who might be a secret weapon for Notre Dame's offense next season. That's coming up next. Today's episode is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. With 4K streaming, watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney+, Max, and more. Fire TV Stick 4K has endless entertainment options, whether you're a hardcore gamer or if you just love watching shows and movies. Head to Amazon.com/FireTVLockedOn to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. All right, coming in at number 3 for my list of the top 5 freshmen who are going to make the biggest impact this fall, I've got wide receiver Elijah Burress. And I'm going to be honest, before spring practice, I wouldn't have given him much thought at all to putting him even on this list. Now I question if he's too low at 3. His performance in spring practice was one of the biggest surprises of the entire spring. Credit to him, he took advantage of increased opportunities with so many guys out. Malachi Fields wasn't around. Jordan Faison was cross-training between football and lacrosse. Will Pauling was limited with an injury. Jaden Greathouse was on the rest plan. Micah Gilbert got hurt in like the first drill of spring. So there weren't that many receivers to go around, but they were getting a lot of reps with the ones, and Elijah Burress took advantage of those opportunities. In the spring game, he only had 2 catches for 21 yards, but one of those catches was a touchdown from CJ Carr, and he ran a great comeback route near the sideline. It was a great throw by Kenny Minchie and a great catch by Elijah Burress to get that first down. I believe it was on 3rd down as well, and I think that was like a small glimpse into what he had been doing every single day in practice throughout the spring. I think the reports on him have been great, so I think he certainly is going to be in the mix in the wide receiver rotation this fall. He's been really rising up the ranks if you look at what he started to do over his senior year, because as a junior, he was not a very highly rated recruit, but then he ended up finishing strong. 24/7 had him as the 28th ranked receiver in the class, number 240 player overall. Other sites weren't quite as high on Burress, so his composite ranking wasn't great. He wasn't even in the top 400, but that doesn't matter anymore, right? He's with the team. He's competing with the starters and really everyone in that receiver room every single day in practice, and he is more physically ready than I thought he would be at this point, because he was listed at 170 on all the recruiting sites, and when you look at his film, I thought he looked really skinny. So I thought 170 was probably 5, maybe even 10 pounds more than he actually weighed. But then you look at the official roster on the Notre Dame website, he's listed at 182. And maybe that's a byproduct of being in Lauren Lando's weight room for, the past 6 months because he was an early enrollee. So maybe he bulked up quite a bit because obviously the change from going from like a high school weightlifting program to a college one is significant. And these guys just explode as soon as they get on the scene. But that's the case with Burress, and now I have to reconsider his expectations for this ceiling because I think he's going to be a really good player later on. But what can he do this year? His path to playing time isn't quite as easy as, say, a Flanigan because Malachi Fields, Jane Greathouse, Jordan Faison, and Will Pauling are the top 4 receivers. They are locks, even though Fields hasn't even stepped on campus yet, or at least not as a legitimate player. But then the 5th and 6th spots are up for grabs because Notre Dame's wide receiver coach, Mike Brown, has made it clear he wants to rotate 6 guys. That's kind of where he draws the line. And if you look at what the guys on the roster did in the spring, I don't really think KK Smith made a significant move. I thought he could maybe do it going into spring, but it didn't seem like that really happened. And Burress projects as a Z receiver, which means he'll be fighting with KK Smith to be Jordan Faison's backup. And if KK Smith's not making a move, then maybe Burress is the first guy off the bench when Jordan Faison comes off the field. And I'm certainly very high on Mikey Gilbert, but I think he's more of a boundary receiver, and he's also coming off an injury. Cam Williams just isn't ready at this point in time, so I don't think he's going to be a factor in the rotation. Logan Soldate could be a factor, but he's more of a slot receiver, and I don't think the other freshmen, Jerome Bettis Jr. or Scrap Richardson, are ready to make an impact this year. So Burress has the talent, and he will actually have the opportunity at some point to crack the rotation. I doubt they'll be going to him a lot early on in the season, especially considering they open up against Miami and then have Texas A&M at home, but over time, as the season goes along, I think he's going to get more snaps. And as long as he can clean up the drops, he can make a big impact. The counter would be Mikey Gilbert also had a great spring last year, and then he didn't really play at all. If you look at the snap distribution among the wide receivers last year, Bo Collins led the way with 670. Then there was a pretty decent drop-off to Jane Greathouse at 493, and then Chris Mitchell had 478. Jordan Faison had 401 snaps, but again, he was hurt a lot last season. Jaden Thomas had 340, and then there's another big drop-off to Jaden Harrison in that 6th spot with 211. So with Burress, if he can get around 200, maybe even 300 snaps this season, that is ample opportunity to make some plays. And if guys get hurt, maybe he'll have even more opportunities. But the way that Burress is delivered in spring practice gives me confidence to say that whenever Burress gets on the field this fall, he's going to make some plays. All right, at number 4, I've got cornerback Dallas Golden. If you've been watching or listening to the show for a while, you know that I have been campaigning for Dallas Golden to play both ways when he gets to Notre Dame. He's an elite cornerback, but he's also amazing with the ball in his hands. He did everything for Berkeley Prep in Florida when he was in high school. So his junior season, he had 205 carries for over 1,400 rushing yards and 19 touchdowns. He also had 32 receptions for 394 yards and 5 touchdowns. On defense, he had 5 interceptions, and he returned punts, and he returned kicks. Now, his senior year, his numbers weren't quite as good because he was dealing with a foot injury for practically the entire season. At one point, he considered shutting it down, but he decided to keep playing. His team had a disappointing season. So when he was going to high school, people were like, what is he going to play? A lot of those carries, whereas a Wildcat quarterback, they were just like, hey, man, get the ball, run, and that's exactly what he did, and he had a lot of success doing it. But the fact that Mike Mickens looks at Dallas Golden and his just athletic profile and says he can be an elite cornerback makes me think he will be an elite cornerback because Mike Mickens has that kind of track record when it comes to evaluating defensive backs. But those numbers on offense, man, it makes you think, like, would it be that crazy to just find some packages on offense to get him the ball? Maybe it's a screen, maybe it's a jet sweep, whatever the case may be. It doesn't matter. Just get him on the field so that he can make some plays. And Pete Sampson from The Athletic wrote a great piece on him recently. And in that article, Golden says that he wants to play both ways and Notre Dame would let him try both ways. Will they actually be willing to do that once he steps foot on campus? We'll see. I mean, Travis Hunter showed that it is possible at Colorado. They're definitely not going to do that with Golden. He's not going to be playing 115 snaps a game like Travis Hunter was doing. But maybe Marcus Freeman has more of an open mind to letting Dallas Golden cross-train once he gets on campus because Notre Dame has a really, really good cornerback room. The receiver room is lacking a little bit comparatively. So it wouldn't shock me if Dallas Golden got some reps in practice, but I think his long-term future is at cornerback. But if it's not on offense and he's not playing on defense this year because they have so many great players in that room, He could definitely return kicks. Jane Harrison is gone. And even though the coaching staff prioritizes trust at punt returner, like they had Max Hurlman returning punts for the rest of the season last year after Jordan Faison fumbled that one against Miami, it makes me doubt whether they'll trust a freshman to go back there and return punts, but I think Dallas Golden is good enough to do it. I think he should be returning kicks. I think he should be returning punts, or at the very least, he should have the opportunity to win those jobs. If he is given the opportunity, I think he's a good enough athlete to win those jobs, but we're going to have to wait and see. I don't really think he has a great path on defense. He's already behind Leonard Moore. He's behind Christian Gray. He's probably behind Carson Hobbs as well, given what Carson Hobbs did this spring. And he might even be behind another freshman, Cree Thomas, because Cree Thomas was an early enrollee and was really impressive in his time there. Golden has expressed a desire to play nickel, which is kind of surprising for any freshman because it's a grown man's position, but that might be his best path to getting on the field this year because Devontae Smith is going to be the starter, but who's the backup? Is it Carson Hobbs? Carson Hobbs is probably the first guy off the bench at field corner or boundary corner. So maybe they just want him focusing on those two positions, and that opens up an opportunity for Dallas Golden to get a lot of reps as the backup nickel. If something happens to Smith, maybe that's how Golden gets on the field. But no matter where Golden sees the field next year, whether it's special teams, defense, maybe even offense, I think he is going to make an impact, and I just cannot wait to watch him in the blue and gold. All right, we've got one more freshman left on the list, plus a couple honorable mentions that just missed the cut. That's coming up right here on Locked On Irish. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control of your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You could track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now, I budget smarter and save more. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. All right, last but certainly not least on this list, I've got safety Jadon Blair coming in at number 5 for the top 5 freshmen who I believe will make the biggest impact for the Irish this fall. In terms of his physical profile, Jadon Blair is the closest thing to Kyle Hamilton that Notre Dame has had since Hamilton left. Now, Blair doesn't have quite the same athleticism or the football instincts that Hamilton had, but he's certainly very gifted. He's 6'5", 204 pounds, has arms that go down to his knees, and he's a great athlete. He was the 4th-ranked player in Notre Dame's class of 2025, just outside the top 150 players nationally, and he has been with this team since the college football playoff. He's more than an early enrollee. He enrolled even earlier than the rest of the early enrollees. Like, he was on the sideline during the Georgia game. I believe that gives him a leg up as well. The issue for Blair is that he's going to be competing with Jalen Stroman, who's a grown man, Luke Talich, who's a junior, and Tay Johnson, who is a redshirt freshman, but he was surging through spring practice, and they're all competing for that other safety spot next to Adon Schuler. And considering how good Talich and Johnson looked this spring and the experience that Jalen Stroman brings to the table, I don't really think Blair is going to be a factor on defense this year at all. But he will be a factor on special teams. I want to get this on record right now, okay? Jadon Blair is going to block at least one punt and or a field goal this season. He has that kind of length. He's so tall and he has such long arms that he could be a weapon on punt, he could be a weapon on field goal block, and he could also be used as a gunner on punt team, and he can be used on kickoff team as well because he's a really good athlete. He can get down the field and make some plays. So even though it's probably going to be a couple years before he makes his presence felt as a safety, we know how much Marcus Freeman values special teams and how he uses the third phase of the game as like a weapon that other coaches they just choose not to. It's kind of weird, right? It's not just all the fake punts that Notre Dame ran last year. They're very aggressive at blocking punts. They're very aggressive at blocking field goals, and they're pretty successful in doing it. Bryce Young, as a true freshman, was Notre Dame's special teams MVP last year, and I would not be surprised if Jadon Blair won that this season. The issue for Blair is he's also going to be going up against Bryce Young, who they're definitely going to continue to use on punt block and field goal block. But Bryce Young blocked 3 kicks last year, and I think Blair is going to be in the backfield a lot, and he's got such long arms that he's going to at least have his opportunity. So he's not going to be a factor on defense, or at least I don't think so. But I think he is going to be a huge factor on special teams, and that's why he comes in at number 5 on my list. All right, now I want to go over a couple honorable mentions. There's one notable omission. That's offensive tackle Will Black, who is the highest rated player in the class, the only 5-star that Notre Dame signed according to the 24/7 Sports Composite. I just don't think that Will Black is going to be good enough as a true freshman to beat out Anthony Knapp and Gerby Lambert, because Anthony Knapp started 15 games for the Irish last season, and yeah, it was a little shaky early on. He had a lot of holding penalties, but he held his own against Texas A&M, and he became a really good player by the end of the year. So much so that Gerby Lambert, the 5-star freshman that everyone thought might start as a freshman, Knapp had a pretty significant gap between him and Lambert throughout the whole year. And I expect Knapp is going to be the starting left tackle this season. Now that they moved Charles Jagusah over to right guard, I think that now that Knapp is back and he's healthy, he's going to be the starting left tackle. And if it's not Knapp, it's probably going to be Gerby Lambert, although Gerby Lambert suffered a shoulder injury. That's going to hold him back a little bit throughout. He missed most of spring, and he's going to miss pretty much all of summer. Hopefully he's back and ready to go by fall camp. Knapp also started last year after he was an early enrollee. Now, the funny thing is, Knapp was kind of moving around all over the line, and ultimately they settled at left tackle. At one point, it looked like he was going to be an interior player, but I think it matters even more in terms of like getting on the field early on the offensive line. When you're an early enrollee, like you just need that more time in the weight room. That's the biggest thing. And I think that because Anthony Knapp was an early enrollee, it gave him a leg up over Gerby Lambert last year. And considering Will Black was not an early enrollee this year, I would just be really surprised if he started for the Irish in the offensive line. Like now they have a bunch of talented players and a lot of experienced guys. I think the future is really bright for Will Black, and maybe he surprises us all. And if he does beat out Knapp and Lambert, then like the sky is the limit for what he could achieve, because starting a true freshman over 2 talented players, including one who's talented and experienced, would be a very risky move, obviously, but if he's that good and Marcus Freeman and Joe Rudolph are willing to do it, that tells you a lot about that tells you a lot about Black. I just don't see it happening this season. I also have edge rusher Christopher Burgess on this one. I think he's a very talented player. I think he has NFL potential, but I just don't see a path for playing time. Notre Dame is loaded on the edges. I think Burgess, at least his freshman year, probably more of a strong side end. They've got Bryce Young, who I think is going to be a superstar. And then behind him, you've got Joshua Burnham, who's very steady, underrated player. And then at Viper, they've got Boubacar Traore, Jordan Botelho, Junior Tuihalamaka, and even Logan Thomas, who emerged at the end of last season. So Burgess, very talented player. Just don't see a way for him to get on the field as a freshman. I've also got cornerback Cree Thomas as an honorable mention. Probably would not have considered him before spring practice, but he was very impressive throughout the spring, and he might even have a better chance of getting on the field as a cornerback than Dallas Golden or Mark Zachary, because he was just that good in spring. Again, Dallas Golden, his impact could be in literally any phase in the game, but I was really impressed with Cree Thomas, so he's an honorable mention as well. My last honorable mention for you, safety Brandon Logan. Pretty underrated prospect. He was committed to play baseball at Vanderbilt. Really talented baseball player. But then Notre Dame offered him a football scholarship after Ivan Taylor dropped out of the class, flipped to Michigan, and then ultimately ended up at Alabama. So then they went out, they got Brandon Logan to commit, and I think he could be Kennedy Urlacher 2.0. Not in the sense that he's going to leave for USC after his freshman season, but I think that Brandon Logan could be as impactful on special teams as Kennedy Urlacher was as a true freshman, because Urlacher was on every single special teams unit, was a very good player, made some tackles throughout the year, and I think Brandon Logan could do the same for the Irish this season. So there you have it, my top 5 freshmen who I think are going to have the biggest impact this season. Number 1, tight end James Flanigan. 2, linebacker Madden Faraimo. 3, wide receiver Elijah Burress. 4, cornerback extraordinaire Dallas Golden. And at 5, I've got safety Jadon Blair. So that's going to do it for this episode. I'm going to be back next week to react to Tiki Hola's commitment announcement. He's deciding tomorrow on Saturday between Notre Dame and SMU. Me and Eric Thomas, recruiting analyst, talked about it this week. It felt like SMU had some momentum, but ultimately I do think the Irish are going to close on him. So we're going to react to that announcement next week. Plus, I'm going to share my post-spring depth charts One episode is going to be dedicated to the offense. One is going to be dedicated to the defense. That is all coming your way next week. So make sure that you are subscribed on YouTube or wherever you are listening to the podcast. Also, let me know who you think will be the top 5 most impactful freshmen in the comments. Or if you're listening to the pod, you can leave a 5-star rating and then you can leave your list in the review. Either way, I'd love the feedback. I appreciate you watching or listening and tuning in every single week. I hope you have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week.